This topic changed my life and changes my clients' lives every single time. Every single message that you send to a high conflict person is a document. You are not texting your ex, you are writing to a judge. I know what it feels like to get that message at 11 p.m. that makes your blood boil. And I also know that that message you send back in that moment can be used against you. No loops are left open for them to crawl through, to misinterpret, twist your words, to start a fight. The goal is for you to be undeniably the cool, calm, and collected parent. Brevity is our power. That's who you want to be on paper. Welcome, everyone. I am so glad that you are here today. We're going to be diving straight in because this topic is one that I'm incredibly passionate about. And honestly, it changed my life and changes my clients' lives every single time that they get it. So, without further ado, I want to jump right in to BIFF communication. And I want to start it with this. Every single message that you send to a high conflict person is a document. You are not texting your ex, you are writing to a judge. So I want you to hear that again. You are writing to a judge because I think that this one lands really on everything that we need to focus on, and everything starts to change when we keep that in mind. I lived this. As you know, represented myself in family court. My communication used to be terrible. I used to be super reactive, all over the place. I was taking the bait, falling for triggers. I know what it feels like to get that message at 11 p.m. that makes your blood boil and the anxiety and all of the heightened emotions that come with it. And I also know that that message you send back in that moment can be used against you. So we're going to fix that today. That is my goal. Here's what we're going to do today. I'm going to talk to you about some real messages, the kind that you've probably sent or thought about sending, and we're going to tear them apart together. Then we're going to rewrite them the right way. So by the end of our time today, you'll never look at a co-parenting message the same way again. But first, I want us to do a quick BIFF recap because it's important that we're all on the same page. BIFF was developed by Bill Eddy at the High Conflict Institute, and I use it in every single one of my messages. I use it with every single one of my clients. And here's what it stands for. Brief, we're going to keep it short. The longer your message, the more emotion is in it, period. It's not you trying to prove a point. You are adding emotion. If you're writing a paragraph, you have been triggered and you need to identify that in yourself. And this is a full stop. You're not sending that message. We should be able to say what we want to say with a few sentences. It's informative. We're going to share facts only, dates, times, logistics, child pickup, those sorts of things. What we're not going to be doing is we're not sharing our feelings. We're not going into the history of the relationship, the history of our co-parenting relationship, not the context of whatever it is that we're talking about, because they're not really asking for it. And in fact, when we get off topic and we go into what you all know I call is very lovingly getting into the weeds, it doesn't help prove your point, and it makes you look like the reactive parent. Our communication should be friendly. I want to be really clear here. Friendly does not mean that we're warm and bubbly. It does not mean that you like this person. It doesn't mean that you're not recognizing all of the things that they have put you through. What it means is that it's non-hostile. It means a judge reads it and sees who is the reasonable parent. Firm. There's no open-ended questions. No loops are left open for them to crawl through, to misinterpret, twist your words, to start a fight. You state whatever it is, you close your communication, and you move on. This is not an invitation for back and forths. This is not an invitation for continued communication. That's it. right? So that's the whole thing with BIFF. Simple concept, incredibly hard to execute when you are dealing with someone who knows every single button of yours to push because they've been able to do it. So this is why we practice. Let me transition into some examples for you. I'm going to read some messages. These are composite examples based on real situations. Nothing is identifiable, and we're going to break them down together. I want you to listen, and I want you to be honest with yourself about whether you've sent something like this before or not. Because most of us have, including myself, and I did that before I knew better. Okay, example number 1. Here's the first one, and I'm going to talk about it more in depth as we break it down. But this is what I call the emotional dump. I can't believe you told the kids I don't pay for anything. I work myself to death for this family, and you constantly undermine me and make me look like the bad guy. The kids deserve better than this. Okay, so let's tear this apart. First, what emotion is driving this communication? Rage, anger, hurt, defensiveness. All of these are valid emotions, and all of them are completely visible in this message. Second thing, what does a judge or a legal professional see in this communication? They see someone who is reactive, emotional, using the children as the centerpiece of their grievance, even though the intent that you had was to defend yourself. This message actually hurts you. It does not help you. Third, where's the jade? Where is jade? Fresh, quick reminder, what is jade, Bridget? Justify, argue, defend, explain. All of this is in that message. It's all there. I work myself to death. That's defending. You constantly undermine me. That's arguing. None of this is needed to be said at all. And it gets you every single time. This trips you up constantly. Here's the real question for you. What was the goal of this message? Did you want to be heard? To feel validated? And did it accomplish that for you? Absolutely not. It gave the other person exactly what they wanted from you, and that was a reaction. So if I were to rewrite this message with you, I want us to think about it together. We're going to take out all the emotion, the defensiveness, the arguing, and reword. How about, I'd like to keep adult financial matters between us and away from the kids. Thank you. That's it. It's what, 13, 15 words or so? A judge reads that and sees a composed parent who's maintaining boundaries, is staying child focused, and is not putting the child in the middle of adult conflict. That's who you want to be on paper. That's who you want to be in this co-parenting journey every single time. The jade spiral, I see it every day. It's something I see constantly. I get it in DMs, I get it in emails, I get it in our community. Here's an example. I'm switching the pickup time because my mom has a doctor's appointment, and I already asked you last week, and you said it was fine, and I have the text to prove it. So I don't know why this is an issue. Can you feel the anxiety in that message? I can. The over-explaining, do you sense that? This person is bracing for a fight before the fight even starts. And I've worked with a client very recently, and we've been attacking a lot of this overthinking. Well, if I don't say this, then they're going to come back and argue that. Well, if I don't say this, they might say the other thing. Why are we sitting here in a place waiting for the other shoe to drop, anticipating what they may or may not say or do? Do you have any control over that? No. Have you ever had any control over that? No. You've never had any control over anyone, including your children, other than yourself. Here's what's wild by the over-explaining to me. In this message in particular, they've actually handed the other person 5 different things to argue about in the message. Let's break it down. The appointment, the prior conversation, the text message, whether it was fine and why it's an issue. 5 things. You don't owe anyone an explanation. You don't owe any kind of context. You owe them logistics, but that's it. So digesting that, because it's a lot of information that I'm throwing your way, I want us to rewrite this message using BIFF, implementing Jade. Per our agreement, pickup will be at 4 p.m. Sunday instead of 2 p.m. Can you please confirm? Thanks. Done. I've given them no ammunition. There's no openings. There's really nothing to argue with. Could they argue with you? Of course. Are they going to argue with you? Most likely. But the point is, you are learning to perfect your communication so that you're not giving them these windows to go into to start these arguments. Third example, the almost BIFF message. I get a lot of these. I read a lot of them. I correct a lot of them. This one is my favorite because it's really sneaky, right? The almost BIFF, people think that they're doing great and they've come a long way in their messaging. And then they add one little sentence that blows the whole damn message. That works. Though it would be nice if you gave me more notice next time. Okay, now think about it for a second before I say anything else. Was every part of that message necessary? That works. Though it would be nice if you gave me more notice next time. You see that second sentence there? That's bait. That is an invitation for conflict between you and the other parent. It's the invitation for conflict that is dressed up as a reasonable request. And you might notice that a high conflict person does this in their own communication with you, right? The other person is going to take this bait every single time. Just because the high conflict person models this type of behavior, models this form of communication, does not mean that you have to do it. And when we pull ourselves out of this high conflict abusive relationship, right, you may have caught on that you had been conditioned for quite some time to start to adopt certain mannerisms of this person, their form of speaking, their form of thinking sometimes, right? It becomes very toxic. So we have to recognize that in ourselves so we can stop the behavior. That doesn't mean that you're narcissistic. No, that's not what it means. Does that mean that you're abusive? It just means that you have gotten caught up in their game and this tit for tat back and forth communication. The rewrite for this message is actually very simple. It's one word. Not two, not three, it's one word. Confirmed, right? So we take both of the sentences, that works, though it would be nice if you gave me more notice next time. That's not necessary sentence number 2. Confirmed. You're confirming that this is okay. This works for your schedule. We're moving on. Logistics have been discussed. You don't need anything else. Brevity is our power. And every word that you remove is conflict that you've avoided. Okay. Fourth example, the non-response. You guys are really good at this. Nope, I'm not response. The no response is a response. Everybody on the internet has said that at one point or another. Heck, I used to believe that. So this category that nobody really talks about enough is the non-response. When the right answer is nothing at all. I will say, leaving messages unanswered can and will be used against you. She doesn't respond, she's not communicating, all of those things. I'm going to give you a strategy of what you can implement instead, right? So let's say you receive a 3 a.m. message, and this is a rant, it's an accusation, manipulation. Maybe there's something thrown in there about the kids. Your job is not to defend yourself with the message. Your job is to document, obviously, the attack, the accusations. We're going to move on for it from the message. You can let it sit there. You don't have to instantly respond to it. Something later on saying, got it, received. That's it. That is a response. We're not engaging. This is strategic silence, even though we're using one word, maybe two. It is not a weakness by you not defending yourself. It's not showing weakness because you're not trying to correct their accusation. You're not trying to prove that they're wrong and all the reasons why. Not every message deserves a lengthy response or a few sentences response. And not every bait deserves to be taken. Does that make sense? So I want you to ask yourself 3 questions before you respond to anything. Does this require a response to keep things moving for the kids? Does responding benefit me, or does it just make me feel better in the moment? Would I be comfortable if a judge read my reply tomorrow morning? Very valid question. If the answer to any of those is a no, you put your phone down and you walk away from it. You can come back to this message later and say, got it, received. Nothing else. And I think it's really hard for us in this situation when we're faced with these false accusations because we have the tendency to want to correct the error. And we felt like, when we were in the relationship for so long, that was highly abusive, manipulative. We didn't really have the voice, right? We had to accept the crap that they were dishing out to us as a survival mechanism. And now that we know we don't have to do that anymore, we sometimes fall back into giving them more ammunition. So I want you to be mindful of that and recognize that you don't have to right their wrongs, correct the record. You don't have to play any part of this game. I want you all to think of a few things that I say to my clients all the time, right? And I've shared them with you repeatedly, but I'm going to rehash them a bit today. If you have to kind of fake it till you make it with your communication, I want you to, in your head, stop thinking that you're writing to your ex. They're not going to agree with you. They're not going to say yes. That's not the point of this communication in the first place, okay? Yes, I know the court has ordered you to communicate with this abuser. I know that they've ordered you to share custody. You have to co-parent, right? We're not really co-parenting, although that is the word that I always use because that's what family court expects you to do. So therefore, the word that I'm giving you is co-parenting because that's what you need to be doing. Or parallel parenting. We're setting boundaries and we're maintaining those boundaries. So with our messages, we want to think like, again, I'm going to write to the judge. I am pretending that the judge is looking at all of my messages. Friendly does not mean that they are your BFF. You do not owe them this warmth that you have within you. You don't owe them that. Friendly, think of it as another way of saying professional. We just have a little bit more added into it. I do like to ask questions to a high conflict person if they want to be persistent on some kind of bogus accusation. Now, some would argue that questions would invite conflict. However, what I know about high conflict people is they hate being questioned, right? It's like you're questioning their authority, you're undermining their authority. They hate that. That's the point. Recently, someone shared with me a message that they were getting from their high conflict ex, and they're clearly falsely accusing them, like harassing them to some degree. And they've shared information of like, I know that you're doing this. I know that you're doing all this harassment. I know it's you, right? Now, how do you shut that down? Let's say they're accusing you of calling their phone constantly, but yet you know that you only communicate through talking parents, for example. You know that that's not true. You have your phone records will prove that that's not true, right? Let them say whatever they want to say. But here's what you can do. You can send them something back of just because you say something doesn't make it true, but that's really odd. How did you learn of this information? Who shared this information with you? Who told you? When did they say it? How did the conversation come about? That's interesting. When you ask them questions, it oftentimes will disarm them. It also, and this is again a strategic move, it will have them go into a spiral. This is like, okay, take the strategy of what a high conflict person's attorney does in the courtroom, right? And also, if you've had an attorney, they might have tried to do this, right? The narrative of what your high conflict ex is trying to accomplish in court is to make you look like you're the crazy one. They've tried to get their whole family to think that you were crazy. Hell, I was crazy. Everybody thought that I was crazy, right? The whole family. In court for a while, they had that whole narrative going. I was the crazy ex-wife. I was so hung up on my ex-husband. I was still in love with him. I was obsessed with him. I just couldn't let him go. Oh me, oh my. None of it was fucking true. Okay, none of it. But I got really comfortable with them thinking that I was the bad guy. Because there's nothing that I can say or do that's going to make them change their mind. So instead, what I was going to do and what I started to do was I improved my own communication pattern. I improved the way that I was communicating with them. And I say with them because sometimes it was my ex, sometimes it was the new partner, sometimes it was the mother. But again, I didn't have to prove to anybody that I was not crazy. I just had to allow the behavior to speak for itself. So going back to what I was saying, with someone who is, really trying to make you look like a problem, make you look crazy. Well, if you send them questions and it has them lose their mind, they spiral. So we have a BIFF message here. We are staying cool, calm, and collected. And then we have this lengthy paragraph where they're losing their shit to go off on you. Who looks crazy now, right? So it's the strategy that you learn to implement every single time that you write any kind of message. And you're like, all right, I've got this drafted. I think it's ready to go. Like, yes. Does it meet all of the BIFF? Yes. Okay, Jade, got it. I'm not falling into any of these, patterns that I've previously fallen into. I want you to wait an hour before you hit send. Nothing is urgent. Oh, but it's about the transportation. Oh, it's about the daycare. Oh, it's about this. Oh, it's about the. But nothing is urgent. Like, it's really not that urgent. You have to allow your high conflict ex the opportunity to parent. I'll get into that in a second. So wait an hour, sit with the message. You can even wait longer, and then you hit send. I want you to do that every single time. Set a timer for yourself if you have to. You should not have your notifications on your phone for if you're using Talking Parents, OFW, whatever you're using, email. Even if they're still texting you, which I hope we can transition you out of and getting you into Talking Parents. But you should be muting that, right? Have the notifications turned off. Why? Because your nervous system recognizes each and every time their name pops up on your phone. Your nervous system recognizes every single time that ping comes in. So what happens? Your anxiety increases. Are you going to be in a place where you feel safe emotionally, where you can really respond to that message without reacting? Probably not. So let's say we turn off all the notifications on our phone. Well, how am I going to know if they're sending me a message? Well, you're going to designate a time of day that works best for you. Is it 7 p.m., 8:30 p.m.? Is it first thing in the morning, right? I personally don't like first thing in the morning. Why? Because it can throw off the rest of my day. I don't want to be sitting with that message and with that thought and feeling anxious and triggered and then waiting for them to respond all day long. I'd rather do it at the end of the day and be done with it. You know what? Then I can look at it again tomorrow. Checking that app once every 24-hour period, not 3 times, not 4 times, no, once. And you're going to feel this almost addiction to be consistently and constantly checking your messages with them. I firmly believe that this is still part of the trauma bond that was developed in the abusive relationship, right? They trained you, they conditioned you to instantly respond to them. And you're all out of whack thinking, well, if I don't respond quickly, they're going to lose it. They're going to start blowing up my phone. Maybe they'll call the police. Maybe they're going to have the police. Let them. They want to send for a wellness check. Cool. They want to blow up your phone. Let them. Does not mean that you take that call. That is you holding a boundary. The goal is not to be understood in your messages. The goal is for you to be undeniably the cool, calm, and collected parent, the one that is child focused, the one that is reasonable, regardless of what they're saying. If you are sending messages to your high conflict ex with the hope and anticipation of you're going to get them to agree, you are going to be met with disappointment every single time. I know that that's unfair. I know it sucks, especially in shared legal custody situations. You might need their approval. They're not going to give it to you. They're not going to agree. And depending on what, some of these things are, you should have a third-party neutral professional recommending maybe the services that your child might need, the braces that they may need, right? The therapy. And from the years that I've been working with clients on communication, the biggest hurdle for everyone to overcome is radically accepting that you can't make your ex agree with you. We can't make them change their mind. And you'll notice in their communication style, they want to kind of gaslight you into agreeing. They want to manipulate you so that you agree. Little segue here off topic of communication, because this actually came up last week in a meeting that I had with a client, and I was actually sitting in with client and pattern viewer. There are some words that you all have used in the family court system, and these words are actually not effective to presenting your case, to showing that the other parent is high conflict. None of it. What are these words? It should already be registered in everyone's mind. You never want to use the word narcissist. It's a buzzword. It's overly used. And in the eyes of family court, it also kind of puts you into this place of, well, are you the parent or are you a mental health care professional providing a diagnosis? Right? We don't want to be doing that. Manipulation. Using the word manipulation. It's overly used. Gaslighting. It's overly used. Abusive. Emotional abuse. Overly used. Why are using any of these words now ineffective in family court? Well, because they've been overused, one. And also, what do we know about high conflict people? High conflict people mirror behaviors. They mirror behavior in individuals that they actually like, right? So they like the behavior. They like the way that you're communicating. They like the way that you're presenting yourself. They start to copy you. They are copycats. They don't have any authenticity. Okay. So they start to use these buzzwords. Alienation is another one. Oh my God. Alienation. They're alienating me from the child, right? We can talk about alienating behaviors and we can talk about them without really ever saying those words. Like, let's think about it for a second. If we were to, want to share how the other parent is, alienating you from the child, how could we show that? Great example. I see it all the time. It's their parenting time. The child has a basketball game. And they want to make you believe that you cannot go because it's not your parenting time. Is that really accurate? No. But when this is a consistent pattern of behavior and they keep trying to bring these things up, what does that show us? That they are not supportive of the child having a relationship with the other parent. This is why when it's your parenting time, you should be proactively sharing information. If you do not have a protective order in place that would prohibit the high conflict parent from attending such events, the information should be shared. If they don't go to the awards ceremony at school, they're not going to graduation, they're not going to that chorus performance, all of the things, but you've shared it. None of that is your fault that they're not there. But what can we do by proactively sharing the information? I know it will make you feel very uncomfortable if they show up and they are there. You don't have to sit next to them. You don't have to speak to them. Your job is to be present for your child. But if we share the information with them, every single abusive ex who you have to co-parent with, every single one of them tries to push the narrative of how you are keeping them from the child. She's withholding the child. They're withholding the child. They won't let me see the child. They never let me go to gymnastics. They never let me go to soccer. They never let me. But if you've shared the information and you're independently tracking the behavior, you're documenting it, right? The child has gymnastics every single Tuesday. I've shared it with the other parent. January 1st, when they were signed up, they've been to one gymnastics practice, class, whatever it is, in the past 12 months. One. But they had the information. So whose fault is it that they were not there? Is that their fault or your fault? It's not your fault. You can't control it because you shared the info. Our communication in these high conflict co-parenting dynamics, a lot of them should be proactive in nature. We should be sharing information, right? Doctor's appointments shared in advance. That calendar feature in Talking Parents is great for this. If the appointment happens to be on their parenting time, sharing it with them, letting them know. All that's helpful. Well, I know what you're saying, but every single time, because I hear this every day, every time I tell him about a doctor's appointment or something, he's like, I can't take him. It's on my time. I have a conflict. What did they just hand you? Their behavior on a silver platter. They have a conflict. Okay. Oh, all right. Well, are there better dates and times that work for you? I'm happy to reschedule, or feel free to reach out to the doctor's appointment and reschedule the appointment, right? You're delegating some of this homework to them to help alleviate some of your stress. Are they going to do what you would want them to do in this situation? No. This is part of learning how to let shit go. But you are giving them the opportunity to show up and parent. So when they are trying to push their narrative of they're not allowing this, they haven't allowed the other, they're keeping me from the child, they're not allowing me to attend events, they never let me go to doctor's appointments. You're going to have all of this evidence that's going to be backed and supported by your communication and anything in the calendar portion of your co-parenting app where you have shared the information and they did with that what they chose, which was not being a hands-on involved parent. It is not fair, and I want to validate this feeling for you. It is not fair that you are the responsible parent that does it all. It is not fair that you are the responsible parent that makes sure that they're at all doctor's appointments, that they keep up with their, yearly checkup, that they get all their vaccinations, that they have their dental cleaning every 6 months. And the other parent is just the fun Disneyland fucking parent. It's not fair. But is there anything that you can do about it? Not really. In an ideal world, co-parents would get along. And in some cases they do, right? Do not compare your co-parenting situation to that of anyone else's, especially if they're not dealing with someone that's high conflict. It's comparing apples and oranges here. We don't need that. It's also not going to help you from a mental health point, a mental health point and that perspective of like, hey, I'm in the same situation as so many hundreds of thousands of other parents because there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions of other parents that are experiencing the exact same thing that you are. So if you're comparing yourself to Linda, the neighbor, who's got, her ex-husband is her bestie and she gets along great with the new wife and they go to basketball games together and they travel together as a family. I mean, is that healthy? I don't know. I personally wouldn't do it. I can understand, oh, it's for the sake of the kids. Great, And doing things like that, if you're not in a high conflict dynamic, wonderful. But that's not your case. I remember I met with a mom probably over a year ago now, and she had talked about how for the longest time she was giving, her high conflict ex kind of the benefit of the doubt, right? They had a custody order in place, but she gave him the benefit of the doubt. And so for so long, they were not really following the order. One of the two parents got into a relationship that triggered the high conflict parent. And all of a sudden, they were not able to still follow with the order or the terms that they had agreed to outside of the order, right? So they're doing all these other things. And that puts the other person who gave them the benefit of the doubt in like this bind. Because now what do I do? How do I argue that this is not a feasible schedule if we had been operating under the same for so long, right? And now all of a sudden, 6, 8, 10 months later, you want to default to the court order. It is extremely important that you are following the order as closely as you possibly can. Moments for some flexibility, I think, is great, right? Grandma's 90th birthday, grandparents' 50th wedding anniversary. That's fine. Look at, okay, can we swap? Can we flip times? If that's a possibility, given your order. We want to be able to provide some flexibility. That does not mean that you are allowing them to walk all over you. If you're not able to accommodate the request to grandma's 90th birthday, how can we communicate that in writing? Hey, thanks so much for sharing that with me. Unfortunately, that particular weekend, we already have plans in place. However, I'm happy to accommodate, a dinner or maybe some alternative plan. Let me know. Thanks so much. Right? Again, I'm using a random example, but I'm showing you the way that we can be communicating these things. What have I accomplished with that message? I have shown that I am not refusing to be flexible at all. In fact, I'm fine being flexible when I'm able. I'm also not saying no. I'm not saying no directly. I'm saying, hey, this doesn't work for us right now. We have plans. Give me another solution. Give me another option, and I can work with that. We can do this in multiple scenarios. Parent-teacher conference. Do you have to attend the parent-teacher conference together? No. Maybe they want to. Okay, go to it. Your focus is going to be on the teacher and the child. Let the high conflict parent act however they're going to act. Document it privately. You should never, ever at this stage be documenting via your communication. I think I say this so often that it sounds like this, repeated record. I just keep going over and over again. You don't have to document in your communication. No, you actually showed up at my house last night at 7 p.m. and that was outside of the court order. We're supposed to meet at the pharmacy at 6. You were not there and then you showed up at my house. You don't have to say any of that. Instead, what could you say in that scenario? We were at the exchange location at 6 p.m. You were not there. By 6:15, we left. I had not heard from you. The child will be happy and available, right? Ready to see you again during your next scheduled parenting time. And again, sending this kind of proactive message. I'm going to tell you why that's important. I helped a client in this very same situation, and the high conflict ex, and she had sent the message just like that. She waited 15 minutes. Minute 16, she was leaving the exchange location. She had things to do. So she communicated that with the high conflict person. What did the high conflict person do? Something that really should not have any kind of hold on any of these custody matters, because these are civil matters, but they called law enforcement trying to intimidate the parent. And well, she had all the communication to back up what she was telling the officer. And it's like, hey, I can send you the screenshot. Happy to do so. And she did. The officer instantly saw what was going on and did not say, yeah, you must go take the child to him. None of that. That did not occur here. She shut it down. Proactively communicating things helps you shut down future problems. The most common that we see, they're not showing up for the exchange time. They're late. They are claiming that you're withholding the child. They're claiming that you didn't share the doctor's appointment information with them and that it's so unfair how you always take them to these appointments. You have it documented. You shared it. When you've heard people on the internet saying, you're not their secretary. You're not their secretary. You don't need to be their secretary. It's not your job to remind them of these things if they have equal access. This is where you all start to use that language in your own orders, and it actually hurts you. While they have equal access to school records, to medical records, that does not mean that you can't or shouldn't be sharing information about it. That doesn't mean that after a doctor's appointment, you shouldn't share, hey, Sally had a doctor's appointment, had her physical, got up to date on her vaccinations. Next scheduled appointment is in another 12 months. Feel free to reach out to the doctor if you have any questions. Thanks. They still have access to the records and they can obtain it, but you've now provided them information. And it was vague. You shared what the doctor had to say and you moved on. You are trying to put yourself in a position where their common tactics, strategies, and narratives will not be able to have the weight that they think. So we proactively communicate, and you will take that weight away from them. This is the work that we have to consciously do. It feels small in the communication. Like, how can my communication help me win my case? How can the way that I document help me win my case? Because it does, right? You are strategically, it's not about who has the highest paying attorney, right? It's not who has more money. Oftentimes they will try to intimidate you, wear you out, exhaust you so you stop. That doesn't mean that you have to, right? It's like checking in with yourself. My ex went through, 6 attorneys. His family had more money than me. I wasn't getting any of it. Did that mean that he won? No. So I will fight that statement every single day because it's in how open we are to learning new strategies and adopting them. The way we communicate in high conflict situations either builds your case or it weakens it. There is no neutrality here. Every single message that you send matters. And if you're not cautious, it can and will be used against you. Recognizing that we can and should improve on our communication is not easy. In fact, you might think that your communication is amazing and that you have no issues with it and you've used your favorite AI tool to kind of run through it. AI is only as good as the information that you're feeding it, only as good as the knowledge that you have up here that you're feeding AI. So if you don't have the knowledge, well, then how can you effectively improve or change your communication pattern? Learning on these topics, learning hands-on how to improve your communication is what will stick. I used to send paragraphs. I used to go through line by line of all of the messages that I was getting, and I had to negate. Nope, this is not true. This is why it's not true. Here's this line. Nope, he wrote this in black. I'm going to write it in blue. My answers. And I would copy and paste. It was so toxic. It was so terrible. It was so time consuming. I would spend my whole day responding to these damn messages because they like to control you now through your time as you're no longer in the relationship. When I had a third party come in, a co-parenting coach who helped me and taught me how to communicate better and started, in fact, doing it for me, I learned. Then I went and learned BIFF on my own. It was not until I had a third set of eyes on my messages that helped me. Back in the day, I had an attorney in my daughter's case, and I remember sending messages that I was getting from the high conflict parent. I'm like, I don't know what to do. This is what I want to send. This is what I want to say. That attorney at the time was not truly trying to help me de-escalate the conflict, improve the situation. They were billing me for their time. Did they implement BIFF? No. Were they de-escalating the conflict as a result? Also no. Many of them, because in law school, they're taught that documentation is everything. As a paralegal, documentation is everything. What is a form of documentation? To them, it's communication. But actually, no. Not in a high conflict dynamic, because you are adding fuel to the fire when you are doing it that way. You're also like showing them your cards. You're playing poker and you're like, here's all my cards. Please look at them. You don't want to do that. Why are you going to tell them what you're documenting or not? Do you want them to read your journal? No. If you want to work deeper on this, you all know that I work one-on-one with clients on communication strategy. I do a lot of co-parent communication coaching. And I also have my communication workbook that will help guide you a little bit more step by step through all of this. All of it you can find on my website, Breaking Badass Coaching. You can send me an email and we'll get the information over to you. I appreciate you all for being here today. You showed up for yourselves, and that is what matters the most. Showing up for yourself first, doing something good for yourself first, and then helping your children. Now, go rewrite something. I can't wait to hear all about it, and I will see you again next week. Until then, take care.